Okay, the slide is sharing in both session.
Yes, sir.
Okay, if then let's start. Yesterday we study about uh, a natural selections process, how it will be happens, and what would be the penalty has to be paid in the nature in terms of generic death when evolution has to be accepted. Regarding this, we studied and we initiated the speciation process, that is evolutionary process. Speciation is one evolution process, that is speciation formations process that we started, and here the speciation happens from a pre-existing population that will be differentiated into two or more different groups, or a new species will be evolved from the pre-existing species over a several time of the generations. So that may the speciation process, and that causes those diversity in the nature. Speciation always start with the existing species, and it has a great ecological will be do two processes. So that may be happen through allopathic, parapathic, peripathic, or sympatric species. And either way, the species will be evolved. So there are in reproductive isolation would be happens when a new species is being formed through a series of events to be happening. जसको भने हामीले हिजो कुरा गरेका थियौँ जस्तो आइसोलेटिङ मेकानिजममा चाहिँ जियोग्राफिक आइसोलेसन एन्ड रिप्रोडक्टिभ आइसोलेसन मेकानिजम छ। जियोग्राफिक आइसोलेसन मेकानिजमबाट चाहिँ भनेको फिजिकल ब्यारियरहरूले गर्दा हुने, जियोग्राफिकल फिजिकल ब्यारियरहरूले गर्दा हुने। सो देयर इज नेभर मेट between the two different subpopulations, and that population are called the allopathic, and which has been separated through geographically. अब reproductive भनेको there is no gene exchange being happens between the populations that with various biological reasons or biological barrier गर्दाखेरि चाहिँ no interbreeding or reduced interbreeding हुन सक्छ। population यसरी डेभलप भएको हामी sympatric भन्छौँ। According to the key feature of sexually reproducing species is that in nature, the member of one species have the potential to interbreed with one another to produce the viable fertile offspring, but cannot successfully interbreed with member of other species. Same species को different species individual चाहिँ mating हुन सक्छ र viable offspringहरू develop हुन सक्छ, fertile offspring develop हुन सक्छ, तर between the different species there is no interbreed is happens. Mara has been given, so there is the barrier is against a sympatric isolation mechanism दुईटा broad category मा divide गर्न सकिन्छ। एउटा भनेको pre mating or pre zygotic isolation mechanism. Pre mating or pre zygotic means that operate before the fertilization, before fertilization. So that prevent the fertilization and the zygote formation process prevention. So there is no fertilization, no zygote formation will happens, and that may be ecological behavior, seasonal, mechanical, or physiological mechanisms for the pre-mating process. So this difference physiological isolating mechanism or seasonal or temporal isolation. Seasonal भनेको different time, different season, different time period of the days मा चाहिँ के हुन्छ भन्दा flowering हुने या mating हुने, जसले गर्दाखेरि there is no, even though they are present in the same ecological regions, there is no mating between potential mates को बीचमा चाहिँ no interbreeding हुँदैन। There may be flowering of the plant that mostly happens in the plant system. Okay, there is differences in the flowering time period, flowering season. Differences met at different times of the day. Yeah, sexually active in the different times of the year. Sexually active. Such type of isolation to flower bloom in the Tradescantia canaliculata and Tradescantia subascera. They both are matured in different seasons, so there is no exchange. So behavioral sexual isolation generally animal exist such type of isolation mechanisms operate in the animals where the sexes of the two species of animal may be found in the same locality at the same time, but their courtship patterns are sufficiently different to prevent matings. Just the bird song, special mating calls of the certain frogs. So that's even though the birds of the different species are being present in the same localities at the same times, and both are matured sexually at the same times, but there is no mating is being happens. It is prevented. Again, the mechanical saying anatomical structure of genitalia where mating is attempted but fertilization cannot be achieved because of the genitalia do not fit. That is prevented by differences in anatomical structure of the genitalia. So damsel fly, it's thought to be primary isolating mechanism in animals. Isolating mechanical isolation mechanism animals differentiation has been found to be. So geographic, ecological, or habitat isolation means geographic isolation barrier only. So barrier there is no gene exchange, there is no mating systems. The population live in the same regions but occupy different habitats or sexually mature in different habitats, so they never come in contact with each other. Different ecology different habitat they may be exist or they may be found in the sexually matured in the different habitat. One habitat to the other habitat sexually matured and they never come in the contact. There is no gene exchange, there is no sexual intercourse. There is a new races are being formed. Physiological or gametic isolation means that is gametic transfer takes place, but the gametes fail to unite with each others. This occurs because the male and female gametes fail to attract, because they are unable to fuse, or because the male gametes fail to survive in the aligned female reproductive tracts styles. So there is also fertilization is prevented. So there is no zygote formation. So that phenomenon elaborate post mating or post diagotic isolating mechanisms. After fertilization pollination would be happens or mating would be happens, but there may not be able to produce the fertile zygote, or if the fertile zygote is formed and hybrid are being developed, they are steriles. That maybe happens here. Third, operate after fertilization takes place and hybrid zygotes are formed, but they are non-viable or give rise to weak or sterile hybrids. And that washed, and this mechanism washed gametes and zygotes and lower the reproductive fitness of hybrid survivors. So that's just the zygotic mortality and hybrid inviabilities. So the egg is fertilized, but the zygote either does not develop to the methods of spring or develop into an organism with reduced viability. Fertilization zygote formation the zygote that cannot develop and it may be aborted prematurely or develop into the organisms that have reduced viabilities. So the interspecific hybridization hormones, such kinds of the mechanism may be found. Around the hybrid sterility, hybrid has a normal viability but is reproductively deficient or sterile. Is the mule, where the horse and donkey are being crossed. We get the mule is sterile. The sterility may be developmental or segregations cause. The developmental hybrid sterility and segregational hybrid sterility. Developmental hybrid sterility causes the sterility because hybrids are sterile here because gonads develop abnormally or meiosis break down before completions. So mule that's the case. Gonad develop abnormally or meiosis break down before completion. Segregational hybrid sterility F1 hybrids or formation hybrids segregation segregation those F2 generation or further generation sterile. Hybrids are sterile because abnormal segregation into gametes of whole chromosome segment or combination of genes. Thus, succeeding generations become increasingly inviables. After other generations, they are inviables. Such mechanisms are the post-mating isolating mechanisms. In this way, these mechanisms are being involved for the reproductive isolations. Another is the mode of speciation, that is generally the cladogenesis mode of speciation. So the cladogenesis speciation will be happens through allopatric, peripatric, parapatric, or sympatric speciations. So the allopatric speciations means allopatric populations. Through this allopatric population develop, that is allopatric भनेको geographical barriers or physical barrier. There is no exchange in the genes or the gametes between the species. So that occurs when new gene pool arise out of the natural selection in those species that are separated from their mother group by the geographical barriers. Geographical barrier mother group duita group separate हुन्छ, they never come in contact. Many small genetic differences may accumulate over a long period, leading to reproductive isolation. यस्तो खालको एलोप्याथिक स्पेसिएसन हुन्छ नि, जब दुईटा ग्रुपमा चाहिँ डिभाइड हुन्छ, डिभाइड भएपछि दे विल बी फार अपार्ट हैन, and they try to be adjust to the changing environment, ecological context, and for that there are happening of the several many genetic differences to be accumulated over a long period of times, and that lead to the reproductive isolations. तो चाहिँ एलोप्याट्रिक हुन्छ। र पेरिप्याट्रिक हुन्छ। पेरिप्याट्रिक मीन्स यो चाहिँ के भन्दाखेरि पेरिप्याट्रिक जस्ट लाइक एज अ जेनेटिक ड्रिफ्टले गर्दा हुने भनेको पेरिप्याट्रिकमा के हुन्छ, बिकज अफ द सेभरल नेचुरल डिसास्टरहरूले गर्दाखेरि, सब सर्ट अफ द नेचुरल डिसास्टरले गर्दाखेरि द पपुलेसन मे बी लस्ट एन्ड ओन्ली अ स्मल इन्डिभिजुअल्स, ओन्ली small or few individuals, they can be survive there, and they will produce they will be intermediate each other and produce a new offspring which are found to be different than the original. So it's an extreme case of geographic isolation, where only a few individuals are isolated. That is a genetic drift, just like a genetic drift. जस्तै हो जहाँ हामी ऱ्यान्डम जेनेटिक ड्रिफ्ट भन्छौँ, जस्तै गरेर यसमा चाहिँ के हुन्छ भने नेचरले फाउन्डर पपुलेसनहरू पपुलेसनहरू नेचरली सेलेक्ट गर्छ र त्यो फाउन्डर पपुलेसनहरु बीचमा क्रसिङ भएर न्यू पपुलेसनहरु फर्मेसन हुन्छ। दे मे हेभ अ डिफरेन्ट एलिल कम्बिनेसन्स, सो दे विल गिव्स अ न्यू काइन्ड्स अफ द स्पेसिस। त्यसै पेरिपेट्रिक। अर्को प्यारापेट्रिक हुन्छ। प्यारापेट्रिकमा चाहिँ फिजिकल ब्यारियर इज नट इन्भल्भ, रादर देयर मे बी इन्भल्भ सम जेनेटिक चेन्जेस अर जेनेटिक कजहरु इन्भल्भ हुन सक्छ, जस्तो क्रोमोसोमल रिअरेन्जमेन्ट, एलिल कम्बिनेसन हुन्छ, एन्ड are beside each others. अरूभन्दा अलिकति फरक किसिमको देखिन्छ भनेको मेन मदर पपुलेसन भन्दा दे आर बिकम्स डिफरेन्ट, इभन दो दे आर connected but they are different. They will not be interbreed with the mother population. There may happen some genetic rearrangement, chromosomal rearrangement, and nothing stopping individual in the entire population from mixing and mating. That does not happen. There's a physical barrier. Subpopulation or mother population which intermating mixing physical barrier are not being problems, but that will not be happens because of the genetic changes. So parapatric species or sympatric that we are well known, that is the reproductive barrier. So two or more population occupying the same geographic area, they live in the same place, but the gene flow between two populations is interrupted through mechanism like mutations other than simply being physically separated. So about sympatric population was again the geographic area, same geographic area, same place. Two individual population or which there is no gene flow, and there is no gene flow through and the gene flow may be interpreted by mechanism other than simply being physically separated. The physical barrier by just to give genetic mutation happens, and genetic mutation may happens to the individuals, and they found to be different than the mother plants, and there may be prevention on the gene flow between those newly developed population to the mother population. So that is the sympatric species. In this way, the cladogenesis, this mostly the cladogenesis species would be happens in such a way that can be pictorially can be seen as just like as this. So allow other place and other place geographically isolated population. And they are separated each other. So they becomes far and far. Or periphery nearby place they are out of besides and near a small population it's a natural disaster most of these individuals the population they are being died and only a few may survive, which make a founder population and they gives you a new kinds of the species population and species. Or parapatric they are continuously being hello. म एकछिन क्लासमा छु है 1 घण्टा पछि गरौँ parapatrics beside place they are living in the same place they are found to be of difference because there is the genetic rearrangement maybe happens. There will not be happening in the intermating. So sympatric they are the intermate. There is no physical barriers within the same place, same geographic region they are living. There is mixing, there is mating being happens, but that will not be. There is no barrier for the mating, but that will not be happens. That may be due to the some sort of genetic mutation may be happened there, and that will causes no intermating between the newly formed population to the mother population. So this kinds of reproductive isolations are हुन सक्छ त्यसै गरेर इनिशियल स्टेप अफ स्पेसिएसन ओरिजिनल पपुलेसन्स इनिशियल स्टेप अफ स्पेसिएसनमा यस किसिमको कन्डिसन छ जस्तो ब्यारियर फर्मेसन हुन सक्छ एलोप्याट्रिक ब्यारियर फर्मेसन भयो अनि पेरिफेट्रिक there is some natural disaster a small sample they are moved from theirs that creates a new species. Parapatric they remain nearby, but there is the changes in the genetic makeup and there is a genetic polymorphism will be involved. They are intermixed, same localities, same space area they are living, but because of the mutation being happens in the genetic constitutions, they cannot be interchanged their gene flow. There is no gene flow, there is no interbreed between the populations. So these are the way of speciations. Evolutions. By evolution, evolution there must be happen the changes in the genetic characters that are inherited. Genetic characters change. This must be accumulated over a long time period, and all kinds of the new species has to be developed. New generation has to be developed. That is evolutions. The change in the inherited characteristics of biological population over successive generation. Successive generation over biological population inherited character changes to evolution. Evolutionary processes give rise to diversity at every level of biological organization, including species level, individual organism, and molecular such as DNA and protein levels. Evolution the diversity will be created. Aid diversity aid DNA level, protein level, species organism level, species level, ecology level, biosphere level, so diversity will be happens and rises due to the evolutionary processes. And there are simple theory of evolution has been given by the different scientists. So you may have been studied this type of evolution or theory previously. You can read yourself these things. Just the Lamarckism theory given by the Lamarcks. Lamarckism theory a use of organ or not. Just survivability को लागि चाहिँ organ को use अनुसार चाहिँ चेन्जेस भएको छ भने जस्तो जिराफको केसमा चाहिँ लामर्किजम थ्योरीले जिराफले के भन्छ भन्दा जिराफले चाहिँ रुखको टुप्पा टुप्पाको पात खाँदै खाएर सर्भाइभ गर्थ्यो रुख त बढ्दै बढ्दै सानो हुन्थ्यो अनि फेरि बढ्दै बढ्दै जान्थ्यो जिराफको नेक त बढ्थेन तर सर्भाइबिलिटीको लागि चाहिँ जिराफ ह्याज चेन्ज इट्स नेक स्ट्रक्चर्स सो इट बिकम्स सर्भाइभ in the long terms of generation भनेर भने जस्तो यो ल्यामार्किजम theory can go to Darwinism theory, that is classical theory, and then neo-Lamarckism, Darwinism, they are the classical theory. Darwin's way published origin of species भन्ने कुरा डार्विनले के भन्छ नेचुरल सेलेक्सन छ डार्विनको मेन भनेको नेचुरल सेलेक्सन हो नेचुरल सेलेक्सन अफ इभोल्युसन प्रोसेसमा डार्विनको चाहिँ के भन्छ भन्दा देयर इज द कम्पिटिसन बिङ ह्यापन्स अनि यो इभोल्युसन किन भयो भन्दा ड्यू टु द लिमिटेड फुड सप्लाइज एन्ड इन्भाइरोमेन्टल कन्डिसन र लिमिटेड फुड सप्लाई गर्दा इभोल्युसन भएको भन्ने कुरालाई चाहिँ अहिले भोलि फोकस गर्छ जसले गर्दा के हुन्छ त सेम स्पेसिसको बिचमा चाहिँ कम्पिटिसन हुन्छ फर द सर्भाइभलिटीको लागि and survivability requires so that is what we call struggle for existence. So remember those who are able to be win over the enemies, they are survive. Those who lost the war, they are lost from the nature. So in this way, evolution being happens when Darwinism has given. He says that first fittest member of the species will survive the struggle of existence, which he terms the survival of the fittest, and factor responsible for this phenomenon was called natural selection. And natural selection, there is the variation will be happens, and that variations helps in the selection by the natures. Darwin recognized two types of variation: the living organisms, so continuous and discontinuous variations. Darwin believed that continuous and continuity variation was the basis of evolutions. Discontinuous variations is the basis of evolutions. When I say Darwinism, you may have a mutation theory. Hugo de Verais, who studied about this mutation theory. So new species arise हुनुको कारण के भन्दा म्युटेसन हो र म्युटेसन चाहिँ एक्युमुलेसन हुँदै जाँदाखेरि चाहिँ न्यू स्पेसिस आर डेभलप हुन्छ र नेचुरल सेलेक्सन वाज नट द इन्सस्ट काइन्ड्स अफ द इभोल्युसन भनेर चाहिँ म्युटेसन थ्योरीले भन्छ सिन्स म्युटेसन आर र्यान्डम इट इज इजम टु बी दैट इभोल्युसन वाज अल्सो र्यान्डम Otherwise, the mutation is the ultimate source of the genetic variation present in the biological world, but the natural selection is required to bring about the evolution of new living forms. Neo-Darwinism, several scientists have put this theory, and this is a theory of synthetic theory. Neo-Darwinism, those scientists have attempted to explain the mode of origin of variations, the origin and role of reproductive isolations, the occurrence and role of natural selections, the identification and elucidations of the effect of other evolutionary forces like random drift, molecular derived, that are the evolutionary process due to gene conversions, unequal crossing over, slippage, etc. So several scientists, they try to explain these things and they put forward this synthetic theory, new Darwinism theory. So you must have to be read these things. I'm not going to detail. Okay, in the evolutionary process, what will happens? The inherited character has to be changed over the generation to generation. But how this will be happens? What kinds of the changes being happens in the course of the evolutions? There have been found in the evolution to be happening at the gene and genome levels. Gene and genome level evolution. So gene and genomes existing today are the cumulative result of evolutionary events that have taken place in the past. Previously, the evolutionary events have been take place, so that's the gene and genomes today exist is a cumulative result of that events. So, gene evolution, gene and genome level evolution new species they will be formed. Present species are being found due to there has been happened the several evolutionary activities on gene and genome levels. So, gene evolution by duplications. Gene duplication चाहिँ gene evolution भएको भन्छ र अब here the individuals single gene मा चाहिँ duplication हुँदाखेरि duplication of individual genes or parts of the genes axon को duplication individual genes or parts of the gene that is axon may be duplicated subgenomic duplications and rarely duplication of the whole genomes individual gene को duplication हुन सक्छ axon duplication हुन सक्छ र whole genome duplications may be happens in the evolutionary course. The duplication of gene relieves the selective pressure on that genes. Our gene duplication भयो भने जुन पर्टिकुलर जीन हो त्यसमा हुने जुन सिलेक्सन प्रेसर छ त्यसलाई रिलिभ गरिदिन्छ. And after all duplication events, the gene can accumulate mutations without compromising the original functions. provided the duplicated gene has separated regulatory controls. Duplication can also result in genetic dead end. So that kinds of the events happen due to the gene duplication ले गर्दा है यो चाहिँ duplication गर्दा के हुन्छ भन्दाखेरि यो जुन variations अथवा gene can be accumulated mutations gene ले चाहिँ mutation accumulate गर्न सक्छ without loss of the functions है compromising original function मा compromise गर्नु पर्दैन original function पनि हुन्छ besides that extra functional activities पनि maybe happens there किनकि the duplicated gene may have a regulatory controls and separate regulatory control भयो भने that may gives you a new kinds of the functions duplication can result in a genetic dead end जस्तो mutation ले गर्दाखेरि genetic dead हुन सक्छ recessive allele may be formed there that may be causes the dead to dead end चाहिँ duplication that will cause the genetic dead to be end. So you can see here the ancestral genes, few mutations accumulated here, strong selective pairs. And here is one gene by gene duplication happens. A1, A2, A becomes in the two copies A1, A2. And here is the selective pairs. A1 having a selective pairs र त्यो चाहिँ एकदम strong selective pairs हुँदै जाँदाखेरि के भयो भन्दा slow in the mutation to be accumulations A1 with original functions and there is being happen some mutation here due to the selections process ले गर्दा mutation will be happens र original function is being combined अर्को चाहिँ process के भयो भन्दाखेरि duplication is being there duplication भयो भने के हुन्छ A will be duplicated 2 times so there is a rapid changes is being happens rapid changes due to the accumulation of the mutations and there may be pseudogenes without functions or with advantageous related functions. A pseudogene may be formed and a pseudogene formation पनि हुन सक्छ mutation ले गर्दाखेरि it looks like the gene but do not have a functional activities pseudogenes or it may have a functional genes that will have a advantageous related functions. यस्तो खालको चाहिँ changes will be happens lower reduced relative pressure mutation accumulates here. That is a duplication process. अर्को हुन्छ genome exon shuffling भन्छ हैन exons shuffling भनेको यो चाहिँ एउटा ओरिजिनल जिन हो हैन जिन को एउटा पार्ट 1 of the gene 1 gene 2 gene 3 छ 3 kinds of the genes 3 kinds of the gene हरूबाट चाहिँ यसबाट एउटा जिन एउटा एक्सोन्स यसबाट अर्को दुईटा एक्सोन्स यसबाट अर्को जिन आएर फेरि न्यू सफलिङ भयो न्यू काइन्ड्स अफ द gene is being formed here through the shuffling of the different exon part of the different genes and that gives you a novel kinds of the functions the novel kinds of the functions are provided so those gene shuffling process so the gene evolution by exon shuffling create a new genes by placing parts of the existing genes into one new context using functional properties in a new combinations अनि अर्को हुन्छ क्रोमोसोमल लेभल अफ इभोल्युसन्स अब जति इभोल्युसन भइरहेको छ फ्रम प्रिभियस ancestral time to the present time हेर्ने हो भने there have been found several changes in the chromosome levels मा chromosomal changes may be happen due to the inversion ले हुन सक्छ duplication ले हुन सक्छ translocation हुन सक्छ deletion हैन so many processes are being happens there for the chromosome evolution so it occurs by structural rearrangement of the genome at the chromosomal levels chromosomal level मा चाहिँ structural rearrangement हुन्छ अब स्ट्रक्चरल रिअरेन्ज हुँदाखेरि जिन अर्डर रिअरेन्ज पनि हुन सक्छ जिन स्ट्रक्चरल रिअरेन्ज अर जिन अर्डर रिअरेन्ज दुटै हुन सक्छ रिलेटेड स्पेसिस फर एक्जाम्पल mammals differ in the number of their chromosome and chromosomal morphology but in the number of genes which are often conserved to a remarkable degree अब क्रोमोसोम नम्बर र क्रोमोसोम मोर्फोलोजीमा चाहिँ रिलेटेड स्पेसिस डिफरेन्सेस हुन सक्छ तर नम्बर अफ जिन्स इज नट बिन differs there that is in converse so the human chromosome 2 appears to have evolved from the fusion of two primate chromosomes so human chromosome 2 this is the human chromosome 2 human chromosomes humans chimpanzee gorilla orangutans chromosomes यो human chromosome 2 चाहिँ इभल्भ भएको चाहिँ कसरी भन्दा that is the fusion of the two primate chromosomes two primate chromosome based fusion version chromosome 2 is being found to be evolved. The chromosome 3 of the orangutan differ from that of man and other primate by pericentric inversions. orangutanमा हेर्ने हो भने देयर इज बिङ ह्यापन द पेरिसेन्टिक इन्भर्सन्स अब यो तीनटा बिच चाहिँ सिमिलर काइन्ड्स अफ द मोर्फोलोजी पाइएको छ भने तर यसमा चाहिँ हेर्ने हो भने देयर हेज बिन फाउन्ड टु बी अ डिफरेन्स इन orangutan that is due to pericentric inversion ले गर्दा भने चाहिँ क्रोमोसोमल लेभलमा एभोल्युसन हुन्छ द एभोल्युसन मे बी ड्यू टु द क्रोमोसोमल रिअरेन्जमेन्टले जस्तो भनिहाल्नु देयर मे बी अफ ट्रान्सलोकेसन हुन सक्छ हैन हेटेरोजाइगस ट्रान्सलोकेसन हुन सक्छ इन्भर्सन हुन सक्छ डुप्लिकेसन हुन सक्छ or deletion may be happening so that causes the evolutions to be happening at the chromosomal levels. So in the chromosome levels there are other kinds of the example you can be found just the gene level ma handle पनि chromosome ma पनि this is the evolution how evolution is being happens on the sex chromosome of the vertebrates so the ZW system छ को चाहिँ ZW system हेर्ने भने comparative mapping demonstrated 5 orthologous segments that are sex chromosome in one vertebrate and autosomal in others. एउटामा चाहिँ sex chromosome अरूमा चाहिँ autosomal चाहिँ चेन्ज गरेको पाइएको छ जस्तो here has been found to be differences over the reptiles and they have a common root and separated is a reptiles and synapsid reptiles in certain time period of 300 million years ago. त्यसपछि synapsid reptile divided into Prothera and Theria, Prototheria and Theria अनि reptiles divided into snakes, then the turtle and birds. अनि how अनि Prothera मा platypus, Prototheria, Theria मा चाहिँ Metatheria र Eutheria, अब Eutheria मा humans, Metatheria मा kangaroo, Prototheria मा platypus develop. के छ भन्दा there you can see differences in the sex chromosome. Snake ZW, total originals, total and birds have more or less similar. Platypus have different kinds. Kangaroo have the different. Human this is a totally different kinds of the chromosomes. So here are the kind of change on the SRI gene. XY, human XY SRI gene. That SRI gene is being found to be responsible for the maleness in the humans. So is it changes found. यो येलो सेगमेन्ट भनेको चाहिँ यो जुन येलो सेगमेन्ट येलोनेस देखिएको छ दिस येलोनेस भनेको चाहिँ सेक्स क्रोमोसोम इन केस अफ द स्नेक स्नेकमा चाहिँ सेक्स क्रोमोसोम हो येलो पार्ट रेड पार्ट भनेको DMRT which is responsible for the sex here the DMRT which is responsible for the sex determination in the birds, and this blue part is the SRI genes, which is responsible for the sex chromosome in the sex determination in the mammals, particularly human. Same thing. So, this thing further हेर्ने हो भने sex chromosome को further हेर्ने हो भने there has been found several kinds of the events being takes place for the changes to be happening over the mammals. So multiple translocation would be happens here. So multiple translocations are new. That is the de novo synthesis of the new genes here. De novo synthesis. That is the fusion of the chromosomes here. Gene fusion. So in this way, several kinds of the mammals has been found to be evolved because of the several changes is being happens to the chromosomal levels. This is a plant case plant development what is being happens there has been happened several evolutionary events just nested chromosome fusions whole genome duplication process is being taken place there just this ancient ancestral this is the whole genome duplication process here star whole genome duplication process so there is the intermediate ancestor green intermediate ancestors and from there the several kinds of the crop species has been evolved so recent ancestral developed they are divided into the different two branches or recent ancestor is being formed. The recent ancestor was duplications. Whole genome duplication like the image formation and same kinds and same will be transport is becomes sorghums. And यहाँ चाहिँ डबल डुप्लिकेसन भयो होल जिनोममा इन प्यालियो हेक्साप्लोइडबाट आउने हो भने सोयाबिन फर्मेसन हुँदा यहाँ 2 टाइम्स होल जिनोम डुप्लिकेसन छ भने एप्पलमा 1 टाइम्स होल जिनोम डुप्लिकेसन छ पोपुलरमा 1 टाइम्स यसमा चाहिँ 2 टाइम्स होल जिनोम डुप्लिकेसन छ and whole genome duplication is being happened so potato is being evolved and was found to be different than the beets even though both have a common root दुईटैको कमन रूट छ तर एउटामा चाहिँ होल जिनोम डुप्लिकेसन भयो अर्कोमा चाहिँ भएन सो दे आर टु डिफरेंट काइन्ड्स अफ द स्पेसिस भनेर यसरी सो द क्रोमोसोम नम्बर हैज बीन चेन्ज्ड द नेस्टेड क्रोमोसोम फ्युजन हैज बीन हैपेन्स होल जिनोम डुप्लिकेसन ओन्ली हैपेन्स इन द डाइकोट एन्ड मोनोकोट फ्रम द ancestors to the modern lineage so in such a way that different kinds of the plant species has been found to be evolved in the world explanation गर्छ evolutionary process मा evolutionary tree formations so that is a molecular phylogenetics and evolutionary tree reconstruction process अब हामी इभोल्युसन प्रोसेस गर्यौं भने हामीले चाहिँ फाइलोजेनेटिक ट्री एनालाइसिसहरु गर्नुपर्ने हुन्छ फाइलोजेनेसिस प्रोसेसहरु स्टडी गर्नुपर्ने हुन्छ फाइलोजेनेटिक ट्री कन्स्ट्रक्सनबाट सो दिस फाइलोजेनेटिक ट्री क्यान बी कन्स्ट्रक्टेड जस्तो पहिला चाहिँ मोर्फोलोजिकल क्यारेक्टरको आधारहरुमा फिजियोलोजिकल बायोकेमिकल क्यारेक्टरको आधारमा फाइलोजेनेटिक गरिन्थ्यो भने अहिले आएर चाहिँ डीएनए लेभल स्टडी गरिन्छ र डीएनए सिक्वेन्सको आधारमा चाहिँ अहिले फाइलोजेनेटिक ट्रीहरु कन्स्ट्रक्सन गरिन्छ सो नाउ रिकन्स्ट्रक्सन अफ द फाइलोजेनेटिक ट्री हैज बीन happens so that phylogenetic tree can be reconstructed based on the different types of the evidence so fossils ko aadhaरमा गर्न सकिन्छ differences in the proteins immunological data DNA hybridization and DNA sequence similarity को आधारमा we can construct पहिला fossil को आधारमा त्यसपछि protein को आधारमा त्यसपछि गएर चाहिँ morphology को आधारमा phylogenetic construction गरिन्थ्यो डाइभर्सिटी को आधारमा डिफरेन्सेस को आधारमा अहिले आएर चाहिँ हाम्रो डीएनए लेभल डीएनए सिक्वेन्स बेस्ड phylogenetic tree construction गरिन्छ द नम्बर अफ इभेन्ट्स दैट हैड बीन टेकन प्लेस टु द must have to be study the evolutions is being happening at a molecular level through this process. Okay, that evolution causes the genetic variations. Evolution variation पनि ल्याउँछ, diversity पनि ल्याउँछ, speciation and variation diversity. So that variation and diversity exist in the populations can be studied. Variations and diversity चाहिँ तपाईको जिन लेभलमा या DNA लेभलमा त्यसपछि प्रोटिन लेभलमा त्यसपछि गएर चाहिँ इन्डिभिजुअल लेभलमा स्पेसिस लेभलमा त्यसै गरेर इकोलोजी लेभलमा देन बायोस्फियर लेभलमा इन दिस वे इट विल बी म्याग्निफाइड हैन variation चाहिँ त्यसरी अगाडि बढ्छ सो देयर आर टु टर्म्स कम्स अलवेज जेनेटिक डाइभर्सिटी एन्ड जेनेटिक भेरिएसन्स even though they seems to be of synonymous, but there is somehow a differences being found. Variation to diversity, or sort of differences is being observed. So, genetic diversity. Genetic diversity is total number of genetic characteristics in the genetic makeup of a species. Total number of genetic characteristics in the genetic makeup of a species. एउटा स्पेसिसको जेनेटिक मेकअप फर्मेसनमा जे जति चाहिँ जेनेटिक डिफरेन्सेसहरू जेनेटिक क्यारेक्टरिस्टिक्सहरू चाहिँ इभल्भ भएको हुन्छ त्यो चाहिँ डाइभर्सिटी भयो हैन जिन लेभलमा हुनुभयो एलिल लेभलमा जिन लेभलमा हुने डाइभर्सिटी सो डिग्री अफ डिफरेन्सेस बिट्विन द जिन्स allele or nucleic acid of individual in a populations and causes individual or a group within a given species to possess different forms जेनेटिक डाइभर्सिटी जेनेटिक मेकअपमा भनेको के हो त एलिल इन्भल्भ हुन्छ तपाईको चाहिँ जिन इन्भल्भ हुन्छ एलिल इन्भल्भ न्यूक्लिक एसिडहरु इन्भल्भ हुने भयो सो देयर्स मेन्स प्रोटिन्समा भयो हैन न्यूक्लिक एसिड को लेभलमा जुन डिग्री अफ डिफरेन्सेस हुन्छ एलिल्स genes, allele or nucleic acids of the individuals in the population that having of differences being found, and that causes individual or groups within a group given species to possess different from others. That is the genetic diversity. Or individual like over the population was differences in several genetic characteristics of the genetic diversity. So that may be happen in the gene level, allele level, or nucleotide levels of the individuals arise either due to the geographical separation or due to genetic barrier to crossability. About genetic diversity same तपाईको sympatric or allopatric अथवा geographical barrier isolating mechanism ले या reproductive isolation mechanism ले गर्दा genetic diversity will be happens genetic barrier to crossability. Genetic variations that is tendency of genetic characteristics to vary. Genetic characteristics को चाहिँ भेरिएसन हुने जुन टेन्डेन्सी छ त्यो चाहिँ भ्याराइड हुने टेन्डेन्सी चाहिँ जेनेटिक भेरिएसन हो इट अकर्स मेनली थ्रु सेक्सुअल रिप्रोडक्सन्स जेनेटिक भेरिएसन चाहिँ सेक्सुअल रिप्रोडक्सनबाट हुन सक्छ जस्तो meiosis recombination or crossing over that causes the recombinant formations or kinds of the variation would be happens there independent assortment random pattern of inheritance gene flow movement of gene from one population to the next and DNA mutation ले गर्दा पनि variation would be happens अर्को चाहिँ gene flow हुने भयो from one population to the another population gene flow भएर that causes also variations अर्को independent assortment ले गर्दा र crossing over ले गर्दा that arises the genetic variations in the peoples. In the absence of the genetic variation evolution cannot occurs. Variation भएन भने evolution cannot be occurs हैन Genetic variation within a population depends on genetic diversity. Variation within the population depends on the genetic diversity. Or genetic diversity कति छ gene level मा allele level मा nucleic acid मा variation differences कति छ there is a genetic variation in the population only happens. It serves as a way of our population to adapt to changing environment. Genetic variations that provide the opportunity to be survive in the changing environment for the particular species or populations. With more variation within the populations, some individuals are more likely to possess allelic variations that are suited for the environment and more likely to survive to produce offspring bearing that allele. So the population will continue for more generation because of the success of this individual. Within the population of variation, certain individuals they may have allelic variations. That allelic variations help them to be suited for the changing environments, and they may have a fitness over the changing environment, so they may produce the offspring which are viable because they bear that alleles. So this population will be continue for more generations. Genetic diversity and species diversity are dependent upon each other, that diversity within the species is necessary to maintain diversity among the species and vice versa. यो जुन डाइभर्सिटी चाहिँ मैले भने अरे जेनेटिक डाइभर्सिटी हुन्छ, जिन लेभलको डाइभर्सिटी, स्पेसिस डाइभर्सिटी हुन्छ, त्यसपछि गएर इकोलोजिकल डाइभर्सिटी हुन्छ अनि बायोस्फियर लेभल डाइभर्सिटी हुन्छ। त्यस्तो खालको डाइभर्सिटी अब पिरामिड बनाइ हुन्छ र त्यो जेनेटिक डाइभर्सिटी र स्पेसिस डाइभर्सिटी एक आपसमा डिपेन्डेन्ट हुन्छ। जति धेरै जेनेटिक डाइभर्सिटी भयो उति स्पेसिस डाइभर्सिटी हुन्छ, जति स्पेसिस डाइभर्सिटी भयो देयर इज more chances of to be maintained the genetic diversity. So that kinds of the relationship is being happening in the genetic diversity and species diversity. If any one type is removed from the system, the cycle can break down and the community becomes dominated by a single species. Or genetic diversity, species diversity भन्दै यता genetic diversity lost गर्यो भने पनि system को cycle breakdown हुन्छ, species diversity lost भयो भने पनि system को चाहिँ cycle breakdown हुन्छ। So genotypic and phenotypic diversity have been found in all species at the protein, DNA, and organism levels. And in nature, this diversity is non-random, heavily structured, and correlated with environmental variation and stress. So genotypic and phenotypic diversity is found in all species. सबै species में पाउँछ। कुन लेभलमा भन्दा DNA लेभलमा पाइन्छ, प्रोटिन लेभलमा पाइन्छ, organism लेभलमा पाइन्छ। र नेचरमा चाहिँ diversity is a non-random process. And diversity, this is non-random, heavily structured and correlated with environmental variation and stress. Measurement किसिमको variation पाइन्छ, genotypic and phenotypic variations, diversity, तो चाहिँ environmental variation and stress सँग चाहिँ strongly correlated भएको हुन्छ। environment सँग चाहिँ strong correlation हुन्छ। The importance of genetic diversity is that it increases the genetic diversity. Increased genetic diversity is directly attributed to the adaptive ability of the species. जति भने the wider genetic diversity भयो भने the species may have a great adaptive ability to the changing environments. A population fitness is closely related to its heterozygosity. जति diversity भयो diversity हुनुको लागि चाहिँ homozygousness, heterozygosity both हुनुपर्छ र population fitness is correlated to the heterozygosity. र heterozygosity आयो भने fitness becomes found to be of higher. Commonly associated with the loss of genetic diversity is the inbreeding. जुन genetic diversity हुन्छ त्यो genetic diversity को चाहिँ loss चाहिँ केले गर्दा हुन्छ, inbreeding ले गर्दाखेरि चाहिँ there may happens to be a genetic diversity lost. It causes a decrease in the reproductive fitness of a population because of decrease in its heterozygosity. किनकि heterozygosity भयो भने fitness high हुन्छ, अब population fitness चाहिँ high हुन्छ, heterozygosity loss भयो भने fitness कम हुन्छ। अब heterozygosity loss हुने एउटा cause भनेको inbreeding हो, जस्तो in crossbred population मा चाहिँ inbreeding causes the heterozygosity loss at 50% for generations. So heterozygosity from repeated mating through closely related individuals or selfing is being calculated. So how the variations is being happening is being studied on gene level frequency, allele level frequency हामीले कसरी क्याल्कुलेट गर्न सक्छौँ भनेर एउटा एक्जाम्पल दिएको छु. That I have already given you the questions, so you must have to be solve these things. So Yemen block group polymerism study गर्दाखेरि let's consider gene has two co-dominant allele in the population M with a simple blood test one can determine the genotype of interest MM भनेको यदि चाहिँ if there are two alleles co-dominant allele being present means there are three kinds of the phenotype will be formed. So just the phenotype MN phenotype भयो, genotype चाहिँ MN genotype भयो, and observed frequency is 180 for the dominant, 240 for the heterozygous, 80 for the recessive. So total out of 500. So their genotype frequency is the 0.364816 has been found. We can also define the frequency of allele in the population. As far as allele frequency can be calculated, we are well known about that. The allele frequency is being observed for the dominant, for the recessive P and Q, P1 frequency of M, Q1 N total number of M allele upon total alleles, total number of N allele upon total alleles. So it is 2N MM in plus NM upon 2 into N. So P plus Q is equal to 1. So proportion of each genotypes also we can calculate the P and Q. In both cases we get the same result. So this provides a simple description of the allele frequency of a particular gene in a particular population, and it is possible to compare population. That gives you a comparison for the population to be happens. So I'm going to okay. So for today's